So we're here at 1141 9th Street in Manhattan Beach. This is East Manhattan, commonly referred to as Manhattan Heights. We're walking distance to the local schools, and we're about a little under a mile from the sand or the beach in Manhattan Beach. This is your typical East Manhattan redevelopment site. This lot is 50 feet wide by 150 feet deep. These are considered large lots for the area, but they're standard size lots. This particular one, my client, who's a local developer in town, is going to be demolishing this and building a new house for a new family to live in. Pretty typical two-story wood construction home, but there's a little bit of a nuance with this property, and that's why I brought us here today. This property is a duplex, which means it's got two units, a front house and a back house. As you can see, it was built in the late 40s or 50s. And the thing with this property is you can't just tear this down and build one single family. The state laws that have changed, I've talked about in other videos, they won't allow you to reduce density. So if you tear down two and only build one, that won't be allowed by the state of California. So the strategy with this house is they're gonna tear it down and build a main house with a guest house. And that is essentially two living units. The guest house, commonly referred to as an ADU or more of a generic term. It doesn't have to be rented out, but it just has to have the ability to contain a separate entity, another person, another family. And so in this particular case, we're building two separate structures. One will be much like the typical larger home you'll see, and then the other will be a much smaller unit, one bedroom studio style type unit, but does not, again, have to be rented out. It'll probably be used by the people living on the property, owning the main house, for themselves, maybe for an older parent, or, you know, commonly converted into like a pool house. That's the reality of what these things end up turning into. But the state of California says there must be two living units on the property. And so that's one way that this situation is dealt with. As you look back there, you'll see two very large trees. That's towards the end of the lot. So this house in the mid-ground here is the back unit, but there's still a substantial amount of yard back beyond that. And so just to give you a sense of how deep these lots are, we'll go walk back there just to give you an idea. It's not very pretty, but it'll give you an idea of how big and spacious these lots can be. This will essentially be the backyard for the new house. I don't foresee the new house coming much further out than this. So you can imagine having all this space easily for a pool and a grass yard would be pretty awesome. So in a transaction like this, it's really a product of there being demand for the end product, the newer house. And so if you've been watching my market updates, you can see that there's very little inventory, and there's even less new construction inventory. So there's a handful of builders out there that are looking to buy properties, tear them down and build. And I just happen to be lucky to work with a couple of them and find a few opportunities like this one. This is definitely a case of where the seller was realistic on the fact that it was essentially a land value type of transaction. And then my buyer being a highly qualified, buyer candidate, no loan contingencies, no inspections, a very easy transaction for the seller. Tends to be appealing in some of these situations. So it was a good fit, and looking forward to seeing what my client's gonna do with it, and looking forward to bringing that property to market.